Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video episode on the Forgotten Weapons Library. I was browsing around a used bookstore in the area the other day and I ran across this, Guns of the Wild West by George Markham. And, well, my knowledge of guns of the American West is really kind of lacking, and I figured this would probably be a decent place to start. Happily, much to my surprise, this turns out to be a really nice book. The one thing I like about it is it's extremely well organized, and it covers quite a huge range of firearms of the American Western period, including all the ones that were actually very popular and very numerous, not just the ones that were, that Hollywood remembers. So, for example, there's a lot of discussion of, say, Iver Johnson's in here. Some of the guns that, they may not have been flashy or fancy or all that powerful, but they made a gazillion of them. So why don't we flip this open and take a look inside and you can see what I mean. All right, I got a nice picture of a guy with a Winchester lever gun on the cover. Starting out, first of all, it's going to be good when you have a table of contents like this. But Markham actually starts out with a fairly elaborate, lengthy introduction. He starts in the 1700s and covers, obviously, the American War of Independence and a little bit of the development of firearms in general, up to the beginning of what we consider the Wild West period. So the book is then divided into three sections, handguns, rifles, and shotguns. So taking a look at the handgun section here, it is divided into segments on the various different types of pistols. As I mentioned, he covers a lot of pretty obscure guns here. So not just your typical Remington and Smith & Wesson things, but also Stars, Whitneys, a lot of the contractors that popped up during the Civil War and afterwards, trying to sell pistols to the military. Neat chart here, just one little page, there isn't more than this, but just an overview of some of the very common Western cartridges, which will include some things that you recognize right off the bat, like the 45 Colt, and people may not realize just how much of an influence the 22 rimfire cartridge had on firearms development and in guns of the Old West in general. By the end of the handgun section, he's getting into some relatively modern stuff, and he does even talk about some of the early automatic pistols that were used in the U.S., or in the case of some of these guys, were trialed and never used. So that's cool to see in there. Moving on to rifles, there is, of course, discussion of the origins of the lever action. We have Sharps rifles, so common stuff like the Sharps, thrown in with things that newcomers won't recognize at all, like Jenks, like, what else is in here? Jocelyn. Burnside carbines are a little more common, but here's a good example. Wouldn't we like to have, just a selection, one of each of these, please? That's out of an original Bannerman catalog. Moving on, looks at things like the Remington rolling block, which had its influence, even in the Old West. Gets by the end of the rifle section, he's getting into some of the somewhat more modern guns that we might not think of as Western, but guns that were around at this time period and were having an influence on firearms design. So some of the interesting early magazine rifles, the Hotchkiss and the Lee rifles that were made in the U.S. The last section on shotguns is quite short, just a few pages. He does touch on a couple of the interesting ones, the interesting repeating ones that I'm aware of, like the Roper Spencer. And there we have it. So there you go. There's really a lot more to this than meets the eye, or at least more than I was expecting. I'm very happy to have gotten this. I think I'll be perusing it back and forth for quite a while. Obviously, once you have a basic knowledge, then you're probably going to want some much more detailed books on some of these specific types of guns. But for someone, like in this case me, who's just getting into this area of study, Markham's book here on Guns of the Wild West is really a very good place to start. So I did take a look on Amazon. There are a couple new copies. There are a whole bunch of used copies, and it looks like they start awfully cheap. So it looks like often when I do a review like this, the cheap ones get snapped up pretty quickly. So if you're interested in this, I would suggest get over to Amazon right away. And in fact, when I looked it up, there was a copy for $2.99 plus shipping, and you're not going to get much better than that. Even the cover price, which was I believe 20 bucks. I don't see a cover price in here, but yeah, typical price for a relatively thin but hardcover book like this would probably be about 20 bucks. And for that price, it would be a great buy. I'd still buy it at full price. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and tune back into ForgottenWeapons.com.